The body. I do not know what, who, but perhaps some huge living creature. Why do people, mostly from science, have such associations? Let's figure it out. Is it even possible, and why does our consciousness resist such a hypothesis? The universe is someone's body. The stars above us are the atoms of the body of an unknown giant creature. Here is the name of one of the articles that I found on the internet. And by tradition, of course, I will express my point of view, I will tell you my thoughts. And of course I will give some visual evidence that there is a real similarity. But this is nothing more than a theory, or, more precisely, a hypothesis, of which there are thousands. There is a hypothesis that our universe body is an unknown being. That is why Shi'at body has its limits. However, beyond it there is another infinity, other bodies, and the universe inhabited by them, which is also limited in space, because it itself is someone's body. And so on without end. The hypothesis at first glance is delusional, but if you think about it, it's not so much that it would have no right to exist. That is why it is discussed in all seriousness by reputable scientific communities. In fact, the similarity of macro and microcosms has long been noticed by observers and pundits. And the similarity is sometimes just amazing. If in some miraculous way we could move inside the atom to the third electron in a row, then the similarity with our world would be such that we would not notice the changes. Unless, when looking at the night sky, they would not have found familiar constellations. But the density of stars would have remained the same duration of the day, the duration of the year would have been preserved. Here, time would rush by rapidly compared to life on planet Earth. For a second while you sneeze, millions or even billions of years will fly by in the microcosm. Look, time has stopped. In the center of the universe. Unbelievable. The microcosm inside any living being is insanely diverse and complex. There is a whole universe hidden inside each of us. If intelligent life exists there, then hundreds of civilizations will change, entire worlds will arise and be destroyed. But being inside the atom, we won't notice it, because time will flow for us as before. The topic, by the way, has long been mastered by science fiction writers. Even as a child, I read a story, I forgot the title and the author. But the point is this. The expedition found two giant statues in the desert. How they got there is a mystery. The mystery and the substance of which the giants were made. At first glance, it looked like some kind of rock. The microcosm and the microcosm of the universe. Then, one of the participants broke off a piece from the statue's leg in order to study it in the laboratory and return back. But soon the war began, and the next time the members of the expedition found themselves in the same desert after many years. They found the statues. And what was their surprise when they saw that they had changed their poses. Anxiety appeared on the face of one, and the other, firm whose leg a piece was chipped off, reached out with her hand to the fragment. Feeling pain. Unbelievable. The atoms and cells that make up life on Earth obey the same laws that celestial bodies obey. The universe through space and time. But this is just a story. In fact, scientists believe that the speed of time is proportional to the size of the object. And if the universe of the microcosm is smaller than ours by many billions of times, then time flows there many billions of times faster. This huge microcosm. In addition to time, other physical relationships were found in micro and macromeres. The conclusion is as follows. All that we observe both with the help of our vision and with the help of superpowerful telescopes, stars and galaxies, are separate constituent elements or parts of a certain superorganism, a macrohuman. It is a gigantic superentity, by our standards, 20 billion light-years in size. Recall that the light-year is a unit of measurement of space, not time. this tiny microcosm. In other words, in order to overcome such a distance, it is necessary to move at a speed of 30,000 kilometers per second. For 20 billion years. Stars. There are nuclei of superbeing atoms in our firmament, and the Sun is just one of the nuclei. The Earth is the third of the 8 electrons of this atom. The most interesting thing is that this giant for another superbeing will be in the microcosm, as for us in the atom. If the cell is enlarged enough to see the atoms of which it consists, then the picture will be the same as we see when looking at the night sky. An unusual phenomenon in space, and Wilhelm Leibniz, an absolute authority in mathematics and physics, said 300 years ago that the cosmos is a living organism. Therefore, universal processes, such as supernova explosions, the destruction and birth of luminaries, the activity of quasars and pulsars are chemical processes occurring in the cells of a living superorganism. Unbelievable. The cells of every living being regenerate, divide, and die. These processes go on non-stop. The same thing happens in the universe, only on our timeline it takes a very long time. In the same way as the processes taking place in the cells of our body. For the microcosm, they turn into universal catastrophes, stretched over time. Scientists of the microcosm have probably been struggling for centuries with the mystery of the explosion and destruction of galaxies. After you cut off a burr on your nails and a shot of vitamin B, which was rolled in to improve your well-being, will generate 1,000 new micrometers and destroy as many. That is why a microbiologist observing a living cell with an electron microscope, an astronomer or an astrophysicist studying galaxies and supernovae, is essentially doing the same thing. Trying to understand the structure of the world on objects that differ only in scale. Incredibly, each cell contains hundreds of billions of atoms, and galaxies also consist of a huge number of stars. And has an amazing variety. Stage not so long ago, the Space Telescope is sleeping, sir. He fixed a star system that forms a pair of chains woven in the same way as DNA molecules. Hello, big brother, we are a single organism. That's the kind of sex, but it's just the beginning, a spark to activate my mental processes. Let me speculate as far as it can be true. Yes, there is in principle not much need to reason here, because a person is a cosmos for microorganisms of different species, subspecies, classes, and, of course, sizes. This is absolutely true. Scientists have managed to calculate how many bacteria live in the body of a healthy person. Attention, of a healthy person. There are 10,000 species in total. Not the number, but the types. 10,000 species. We literally carry about 8 million microbial genes. Interestingly, there are different bacteria in different parts of the body. That is, as we have continents and nationalities, yes, and races. The human body contains about 30 trillion cells. The number of microbes and bacteria in the body exceeds the number of cells in the human body. The human body is literally teeming with microbes. According to some reports, there are about 10 times more bacterial cells inside us than there are human body cells. However, recent studies say that there are significantly fewer of them, but still more than human cells. And the body is life for 1 million microbeings. By the way, did you know that people are born without bacteria? I have already raised this topic in the video before last quarantine there. Be sure to take a look. There will be a link to the video at the end of the video. But enough about all sorts of microparasites or how some of our friends burn, because life on Earth is impossible without bacteria. Although this is a controversial issue, let's talk about larger objects. Why do they look so much like mountains, these stumps? Yes, here's a riddle from humanity. Were trees once 1,000 times bigger? My other video will tell you about it better, or go to the Asgard website. Probably most of them have already been there. But the similarity is colossal. Let's jump even higher. Cells are neurons of the brain and the universe. Well, what can there be in common? Well, look how it looks like. And this nervous tissue and the universe are also similar. It looks like the universe that we see with the help of devices, powerful lenses. Turn your gaze to the sand. Yes, on ordinary sand. Some small grains of sand, but under a microscope. Wow, what funny figures. Due to the fact that our vision is limited, we cannot see either the universe or the microcosm, and it would be, by the way, very wonderful. A lot goes away from our view and is hidden. After all, every grain of sand is unique, and it is really beautiful. And now imagine how many such grains of sand there are in the desert. Billions? Oh no, a lot more, sections, but I do not know who counted them there. That is, we live in the body of a really living being, or maybe even a person, I ask myself. And probably you. Or maybe this is the so-called God, and at this very moment, he brings a cup of hot tea to his mouth. Well, it's been a couple million trillion years for us while he's been doing this. And we will all die, there will be a great flood. What if he sneezes now, and what happens to us? Another Big Bang, or a quantum transition. Unreal. Yes, it sounds incredible. I think it's worth looking through a microscope, for example, at a picture of a marble stone, magnified only 50 times. It's beautiful, isn't it? Photos of the scheme in 9, magnified 100 times. Look, these are straight streets and houses, roads. And this is New York at night from a 2-kilometer height. Photo. And this is a photo of Las Vegas at night from a height of 3,000 meters. And this is a snapshot of the chip, and a top view of the city one-on-one. Layout of the city of Helsinki, and old motherboards. What a similarity. Do you think it's an accident? But the world that we artificially created, cities, streets, roads, houses, is incredibly similar to the same artificial world that we created only in the electron. Microchips, electronic devices. By the way, they control the current. Yes, this proves once again that the universe can fit in the palm of your hand, and maybe even in one atom. All electronics are controlled by electricity. A physical phenomenon caused by the existence, interaction, and movement of electric charges. Or maybe we also have electric charges. Look at the city. Urban style implies constant movement. People run, not knowing where, not knowing what they want. Well, of course, you know what you want, but there are certain goals and conditions, or maybe they came to you from somewhere. Yes, moreover, people are some kind of batteries that generate a lot of energy. How does a person generate electricity? The reasons for everything are numerous biochemical processes that occur at the cellular level. Inside our body, there are many different chemicals: oxygen, sodium, calcium, potassium, and much more. They react with each other and generate
и
electrical
вырабатывают
energy.
электрическую энергию.
For
Например, в
example, in
процессе
the process of
клеточного
cellular
дыхания,
respiration,
когда клетка
when the cell
высвобождает
releases energy
энергию,
obtained from water,
полученную от воды.
carbon dioxide, and so on. It in turn is deposited in special chemical macroenergy compounds, let's call them storages, and subsequently used as needed. But this is just one example. There are many chemical processes in our body that generate electricity. Every person is a real power plant, and it can be used in everyday life. People have great prospects as generators of electricity. It can be generated from almost any of our actions. So, from one breath, you can get 1 watt. And a quiet step is enough to power a 60-watt light bulb. But who knows, maybe we are already powering the universal iron or coffee maker, and are just charges in some kind of microcircuit. And what about the information? Now this is a real cosmos. After all, a small flash drive can fit a lot of virtual worlds in which we can immerse ourselves, and the human brain. This is a piggy bank of information of various kinds. This is a world, a universe filled with emotional impressions. Feelings of disgust, anger, fear, surprise, love, joy, sadness. It's like a connecting link, a thread, a chain that binds us into a single whole. These are impulses that are associated with automatic reactions. and represent an innate set of systems of adaptation to the environment by an individual. That is, if a huge man the size of the universe looks at us, he will also see nothing. We're not even atoms. The universe are atom, and we are electronic. There are small charges in electrons, in microelectrons, small generators feeding a microparticle, of which there are probably an infinite number. Can the microcosm really be so small? And why do you think that there is nothing less than an atom and more than the universe? Because not so long ago, we didn't even know that there are bacteria. I'm not talking about all sorts of electronic technologies. As I said, a flash drive can fit many universes. And what will happen in 1,000 years? How much one flash drive can take in itself? Information? Just imagine, it's incredible. But this is also the world, and it is not felt at all, it cannot be felt. But under certain conditions, you can dive in there and feel all the processes. So, we didn't know there were bacteria before. One Dutchman, through his primitive invention, considered that there are some microentities that crawl everywhere. They are on the palm of your hand, on the table, on the products. It was an incredible grand discovery. Previously, before this discovery, it was thought that the smallest creature was an insect, some kind of ant. Unfortunately, we are limited only by the fact that we are not yet able to come up with a super-duper new telescope that will see the universe in every atom. No, I didn't misspoke. It is a telescope, not a microscope. Because perhaps looking through a telescope at the universe, planets and galaxies, we see someone's microcosm. And here are some very funny photos that I will provide you with. This is the head of a tapeworm and mold on a tomato. The skin of Galaturia, this is a sea cucumber. The style is strictly observed as sea anchors. And this is a colony of mold and yeast on Earth. It looks like a painting of the red sun in some Japanese style. And this is something incredible in general. Micrometer colosseums, a copy of the Colosseum, a single-celled radiolarian organism under an electron microscope. And this is cannabis under a microscope. Well, everything is clear here. Little smiling man, and this is a marijuana bud, and these are snowflakes under a microscope. How beautiful, falling. They break into small crystals. Just imagine a falling snowflake, but for some micro beings, it is a real snow avalanche, a huge glass mountain that fell and broke into huge pieces with incredible noise. I am very interested in human eyes under a microscope, and how can I not remember the constellation of the snail or the eye of God? If we imagine for a moment that it would be a real eye, then there is no doubt that we are really in a universe the size of a atom. For this creature. That's how small we are for someone, and incredibly huge for other living beings. And at the end, I want to provide different photos, the most interesting, in my opinion, of absolutely different objects. Microorganisms, plants, and so on, with the caption, "What is it?" And Vladimir was with you. Good luck to everyone and be free. Good health to all, my dear friends. Vladimir is with you as always. Today, we will talk again about the microcosm. Yes, I raised this topic in the last video. By the way, many people liked the video. So, first of all, I want to show some interesting photos that were sent to me by Vicky. What do you think it is? It's a drop. This is a drop of a human tear. I would like to dwell on this point in more detail. Look at what a bizarre internal structure. For us, a drop, well, a tear, is no different from an ordinary tap drop, let's say. But if we increase it, we see a pancake with pronounced highlighted edges. Some interesting information about tears. For me, it was always interesting why a person cries at all, why he cries. So, the main part of up to 98% is water. The rest of the inorganic substances are sodium chloride, sodium carbonate, and magnesium, and there is also calcium sulfate and phosphoric acid. There are proteins and carbohydrates in tears, and in order not to linger on the surface of the skin, they are covered with a thick, greasy film. I mean tears. Here is Mother Nature, or rather, here is our Mother Nature has thought everything through. This greasy film was specially studied by American scientists who found a lamid in it. Previously, it was found only in the cells of the brain and central nervous system. Quite an interesting fact, isn't it? In addition, the lacrimal fluid contains enzymes. The most important of them is lysozyme, which gives the tears bactericidal properties. Tears kill bacteria by splitting their cell walls. The chemical composition of tears is similar to that of blood. Tears carry no less information than drops of blood, and the chemical composition is constantly changing depending on the state of the body. I wonder why, for example, in medicine, tears are not used to accurately establish a diagnosis. Perhaps they are being used, I do not know, but maybe this is the future of pharmaceuticals, medicine. Who knows? But for the rest of the eyes, a natural tear is used, sold in a pharmacy. Since, to be honest, I didn't know that they sell tears in pharmacies. It would look interesting if you came to the pharmacy, tell me to drip tears. And the pharmacist, the seller in the pharmacy, starts crying. I dripped you some tears and gave you some bubbles. Or she cut onions and you cried, or she gave you one place to cry. That is, if you decide to cry, be sure to take a bowl of some kind, drip bubbles there, then they will be useful to you. You will drip into the eyes. So, a land animal that can cry, this elephant. And no wonder. The elephant is a very developed creature, very intelligent. It has one of the highest levels of intelligence. Besides the best memory among all land creatures. Aquatic animals capable of crying include seals, sea otters, and saltwater crocodiles. Hence the so-called crocodile tears. All these animals cry just to get rid of salt. Only a person cries from emotions. In addition, all animals have tear fluid to protect the cornea of the eye. This is official information. And, of course, I am once again convinced that researchers in various branches of science are often wrong. For me, I saw the dog crying myself. I had a pug, and when I scolded him a lot, this tomboy's eyes watered. And you imagine a crying pug. Yes, even if he tore, I don't know, the Italian shoes that which you saved up for a year. What will you do with it? It's such a creature. A crying pug. So all this has not been studied in depth, and I think that animals certainly have emotions. Perhaps they are not like a human, but they are there. And some emotional manifestations of the reflex are more pronounced than in humans. But who can be so happy with a person, the owner, than his dog, for example? Emotions are just incredibly high there. The next photo is a mango weevil. Now I understand where the idea of alien costumes from The Fifth Element came from. By the way, I've watched this movie more than 50 or 60 times, maybe 100 times. Why? You ask. Are you a fan of this movie? No, I like the movie of course, but because in the barracks where the com was a young fighters course. There was a TV set, and movies were played there. The members of the D-Mob who were in the club did not bother much and put on the same VH tape. Well, about the Weevil. This is a straight combat robot. So very belligerent, serious. Although, of course, in the insect world there are candidates for the most brutal and intimidating look, much more serious. The same mantis is generally some kind of alien. The next photo is a butterfly wing. Incredibly and amazingly beautiful, as if the ribbons are multicolored and not a wing. You understand now how beautiful the microcosm is in its colors and shapes. And according to this photo, it is clear that insects, even such as a bee, have a hard time. A parasitic, or rather parasitic, tick. Varroa is a destructor that uses a honeybee as a host. Imagine the size. The next photo is an Asian hornet with poison pressed. A six-fold increase. Look what a powerful sting. Imagine that such a weapon pierces any creature close to the size of this hornet. It is one of the dominant, strongest predators and is killed in the insect world. Look at how huge it is. I remember when I was a child, he chased me like this. I was just incredibly shocked. Imagine, such a thing flies with great speed buzzing and wants to bite you. Somehow I ran away from him. Wasp eyes. I have seen this photo several times, and today I found it again. Pay attention, in the middle above the antennae is if a black human face. Straight mouth, nose and eyes. These tendrils are like hands. I was reminded of this. When before, remember. Remember, as if they lived in those days, well, at least they saw pictures, they made all sorts of mythical creatures. Goddesses, female faces on ships. To be more precise, they were called the headpiece, a decoration on the bow of a sailing ship. So, this just reminded me of the accentuated figure. And these are capsules of moss spores. What does it remind you of? Everyone thinks, of course, to the extent of their depravity. Although, what kind of depravity can it be? Depravity? It looks like a woman's breasts to me. Remarkably simple, very beautiful. Although these are just capsules of moss spores. Let's take a look at you know what? On the Velcro lock. How it works. You can see how interesting and complicated all this is. That's how it works, if you understand. Well, I didn't really understand, but that's how it is. The eye of a needle with a threaded thread. I have already shown a similar photo. The ear itself is not as interesting as the thread itself. Look, the thread consists of how many elements? But probably one of the most interesting photos is what dust looks like. It looks like garbage, only 1,000 times less. Imagine some micro little creature, a creature crawling through this dust and thinking, that bastard owner didn't clean up how much garbage. And this is used dental floss. Perhaps now you understand how important oral hygiene is. But now I'm going to tell you about the characters of the microcosm, even more interesting. Because it's so small that you won't see it. When I first heard about this creature, it was a couple of decades ago. I was just amazed and shocked. Why? You ask. Yes, because I'm going to tell you now. I have already talked about this creature, mentioned it in several of my videos, but today in more detail. Tardigrades are a type of microscopic invertebrates close to arthropods. For the first time, this animal was described in 1773 year by the German Pastor Goetz as a small water bear. Scientists from Oxford and Harvard have found out which animal can survive any catastrophe on Earth, until the moment when the sun cools down. It turned out that the slow walkers will resist the consequences of catastrophes of astrophysical nature. Tardigrades are practically invulnerable. Miniature animals from 0 to 1/10 to 1.5 millimeters, close to arthropods, are known for their endurance. They can withstand ultra-high pressure and radiation, and they can live without food and water for many years. When unfavorable conditions occur, they are able to fall into a state of suspended animation for years. And when favorable conditions occur, they come to life quite quickly. Tardigrades survive mainly due to angiobrobioses, that is, drying. When drying, they pull the limbs into the body, decreases in volume, and takes the form of a barrel. The surface is covered with a wax coating that prevents evaporation. Incredibly thoughtful creatures. In a state of suspended animation, slow walkers endure incredible loads. A dose of 570,000 branch kills about 50% of the trained slow walkers, half. For a human, the lethal dose of radiation is only 500 branch. Branch is the biological equivalent of an X-ray. Tardigrades feed on the fluids of plants and algae on which they live. Some species eat small animals, rotifers, nematodes, and other tardigrades. In turn, they serve as prey for ticks and multitails. They withstand a 30-year stay at a temperature of -20 degrees Celsius for 20 months in liquid oxygen, at -193 degrees Celsius and 8-hour cooling with liquid helium, to -271 degrees. This is probably the most interesting information, based on which it is understood that they are also long-lived, or maybe they are immortal, and do not die a natural death, that is, from old age. By the way, such creatures can be found. This is, for example, the eternal jellyfish. Scientists are seriously concerned about the huge population growth of these creatures. It's not strange, because they're immortal. Researchers and scientists believe that immortal jellyfish have already begun to capture the waters of the world ocean, thereby disrupting the balance of the biosphere. As I understand it, they have seen the deteriorating ecology in their coffin. Excuse my pun. There are others, of course, immortals. Probably, the developers of the program of this reality simply forgot to introduce the immortality gene into them. Oh, sorry, death. Or vice versa, they have implanted the gene of immortality in them. In general, I'm confused. But in any case, there are beings who are immortal. At the end of the 20th century, scientists experimentally proved that hydra never age. They die either from diseases or from the fact that they are banally eaten. That's it. Here is such a mysterious microcosm with its own laws, creatures, and its beauty. Unusual, of course. What do you think it is? It looks like a cobra. But no, it's the tip of a hummingbird's tongue. Birds are only 6 centimeters in size, yes. The weight is less than 2 grams. It is a plant pollinator, performs a very useful function. Unlike, by the way, people who kill these little hummingbird birds for decoration. And now hummingbirds are on the verge of extinction. And who is it that got on a human hair? It's a louse. And who is this bearded man? This is a mosquito, magnified 160 times. And by the way, I didn't know that mosquitoes are such shaggy bastards, just like people. And you want to see what awaits us when we touch nettles. Here's a needle on a stinging nettle for you. 100-fold increase. And this is an ant carrying a larva. Look how embossed and structural. They are smooth, as it would seem. Pixelation fails us. Probably many people think, but what can hell look like? Yes. And why don't you have an avatar for being in the universal, or rather oceanic? Polychaete worms. These creatures live under the enormous pressure of the sea, where the sun will never penetrate. And why do they need such teeth, you ask? Polychaete worms crawl along the ocean floor near cracks, using their terrible teeth to chew bacteria and protozoa. That is, there are even creatures that eat bacteria. This photo reflects all the emotions of this creature, it seems to me. Like, what the fuck am I going to do here anyway? And of course, to relax you a little, it's just incredible. Here's an underwater rabbit or a sea rabbit for you. So this very sea rabbit lives in the warm waters of the Pacific Ocean. In fact, it is a fish, a sea chimera. Such a lovely creature. This could be the end of the video. But I ran through the comments dedicated to the past video of the universe of the body of unknown beings, a hypothesis that breaks the brain. At the moment, there are 1,041 comments right now. But, what I decided to throw a little text and tell my thoughts as always. And before I read out some of such a huge number of comments, it is necessary to say something of your own, to make an aesthetic contribution to this micromeasurement of pseudoscientific indifference. By the way, who hasn't watched the previous video, it tells that we all live like parasitic bacteria in the body of a huge creature. Yes, parasitically, because, well, a person is really some kind of virus and a parasite that destroys the earth. The similarity of the neurons of the brain and the universe under the microscope demonstrates this to us. The truth is not obvious, yes, that's right. Well, okay with a telescope, if there is some visual similarity of many basic elements. And it's not just neurons and atoms that look like the solar system, DNA spirals, and even the eye of God, or the snail constellations, that look like the human eye. Let's start by voicing my thoughts as a kind of antagonism of this theory. Yes, that our world is an organism of a huge superbeing, and who gives a guarantee that this is not a new program about the virtual world launched quite recently, to condense this program matrix or reality. What do I mean by that? Imagine that our world is a virtual in its purest form. We are all illusory beings existing in the universal two-dimensional monitor. And the chief programmer decided to condense the program, create more realism and density for it, not using his potential, but using just the potential of the game's characters, that is, people as the main players who, through a powerful neural connection,
свой потенциал, а задействуя как раз потенциал новой суперреальности. Вот нидерландский и плотности, не используя свой потенциал, а задействуя как раз потенциал персонажа. И главный программист решил уплотнить программу, создать ей больше.
Here, a Dutch naturalist is thrown a new information trap in the Middle Ages, with the help of which a person begins to project a new superreality, without which there will be no push of fundamental software algorithms, codes. For what? We are wondering. Or rather, I'm wondering. Yes, in order to increase pixelation, to put it primitively. As we do, or rather electronic engineers, wizards on every new TV. Look at the old LCD, the pixels are like huge squares there. And the new telecast are already in their grace of the illusory world, the perfect world in fact in the monitor screen or TV. Already looks better than our reality. I don't know if you understood my verbal delusional message or not, but if a person lived and didn't know what an atom was, nothing would have changed in fact. If there were any progress in microelectronics, it would be not by leaps and bounds, but by crawling on all fours. This was probably said by me now in order to understand how the microcosm and everything that lives there can closely exist, with my favorite theory of the virtual world. But the whole human future is predicted to us, in fact, by science fiction writers, or is predicted by someone who will see something there. Or maybe it's not information that is predicted at all, or according to the type of quatrains of Nostradamus. Or even caught from the general information field of the matrix, there is also such a theory. Namely, the construction of reality with the help of visualization and embedded thoughts directly into the brain. After all, thought is material, and man is the main builder of this reality. The brain begins to generate a new reality for us and improve the picture quality for them. From the latter, one can recall the discovery of the Higgs-boson particle, the God particle, but here is a transition to new frontiers and new opportunities, nanotechnology, and so on. All this is a colossal advance in the universe of the microcosm. But the maxi-mega-reality, the mega-world, the maxi-world cosmos remains untouched, because what is available to God, or to larger beings in all aspects, does not turn the tongue, should not be available to worms. Earthworms, that is, people above man. The divine sphere is under 3 locks. And perhaps this sphere or dome, literally, on which all our attempts and successes are broadcast, is something to dig up in the microcosm. Or, excuse the pun, in my brain. Found neurons. Here is a picture of neurons on a huge universal screen. We saw the atoms, here you are. In short, this hypothesis is certainly complicated, only if you do not believe that the world is a theater, where the central character is a human actor. He's probably just an avatar for someone's comfort. Well, I will not blaspheme the divine plan. It will be more adequately said from a religious point of view. Yes, the microcosm is similar, but we don't see little men who write serenade songs dedicated to their females. A person clearly stands apart, and not like an individual. We are essentially monkeys, and we are not much different from them. Because if a person who was just born is placed in any flock of animal communities, he will be the same. Only he will not grow wool, namely as a big picture of the whole society and paradoxical reality. Yes, that's right. All our achievements are not the achievement of an individual, but of a huge cell of society. A person is like a small puzzle in an incredibly huge picture of all these achievements. What is the paradox? Yes, in everything. A man cries and a man kills. The same creature performing different functions. Duality in this form exists only in people or beings close in spirit, close, let's call them. Those who spin with us in our circle of samsara. The rest of the animals, they live in their own world, and there would be no man, they would not care. And it would even be better. There are certain points to this. Distant tribes did not know about diseases until they sailed, their mother white gods colonizers with their own view of life. So there were no bacteria in the jungle. Of course. There were. Or not. Everything is very complicated and confusing, and there is no convincing proof that the world, this is an organism, or a virtual in its purest form, or just a coincidence of random events, and factors such as evolution. In general, a person can go completely into information, into memory, and only the bone composition will remind someone of our existence, as dinosaurs remind us of their existence now. And who should I remind? Well, let's remember about our main brothers. No, not cats, not dogs, but smartphones, which will soon swallow us all with their perfection. Until recently, I pressed my fingers on a primitive device and was incredibly glad that there was a calculator and cool melodies. And now a person does not get out of the screen of this micro device. Electronic, really? Well, the bitch. A Freudian reservation. But supercomputers are not asleep. Skynet is moving the process of a new order. First smartphones, then chips over, and then organics are not needed at all. And chips. And the last stage, the brain. But robots are not afraid of bacteria. They will burn out everything at the subatomic level, creating new metals. And isn't this a test of survival, or the very survival of the species? What I've told you here, only I probably know. Sorry for my philosophical fornication. Okay, let's move on to the comments. Probably, you have understood the essence of my thoughts, that this whole microcosm is just a consolidation in the matrix, in a kind of game, by the very people themselves, who are the builders of this reality themselves, such small designers. That's what they write here. Omega Man 10 writes to me, And in the movie Men in Black, there is a scene with universes, well, or galaxies in parentheses. He writes, in glass balls in the tentacles of a giant alien. Aren't these messages by any chance? Well, the author of the comment is absolutely right. I said 2 years ago that the so-called pendant with the galactic sphere on Orion's cat, he had collars attached there. This is the galaxy itself. In fact, for me it's a flash drive, but of a different order. This may be a clue, because a small alien who was dying there, if I'm not mistaken, I can't quote verbatim, said, "People, you won't understand that there is no size or volume there." That is, in fact, the microcosm in its perfection is the information of streams, which even we cannot consider, either with a telescope or a microscope. Information for us, it is intangible. But it is there, and it is a super new microcosm. In other words, everyone is talking about some kind of transition, about a new stage. Here it has been happening for a long time, on a universal scale, yes, not even on a universal, but on an interhuman scale. But as I have always said, each individual's evolution takes place separately. We come alone and go alone, and everyone has their own goals, tasks, plans for this life.